Hello and welcome back to episode 3 of the Modern Work podcast. I'm your host, Ed from Illuminate Learning, and today we're talking about something every business leader should care about: resilience. Because let's face it, the world is unpredictable. Whether it's cyber threats, economic shifts, or simple tech outages, your ability to bounce back determines your ability to move forward. So how do you design for business continuity rather than just hoping for the best? That's what we're going to be diving into today with the help from M365 and the broader Microsoft ecosystem. Joining me to have these conversations is Candy Keane, cloud security consultant from Westcoast Cloud, and Sam Russell, solutions engineer XMA, working on the front lines of transformation with real customers. So thank you both very much for being here and having this conversation. Let's start there. So let's dive into it with why, with this whole resilience, why is that such a hot topic of conversation at the moment?
I think that's quite key, to be honest. I think it's more around the whole cybersecurity. It's more around what's happening to, more specifically, SMBs at the moment. So with regards to breaches and attacks. And I think it's quite a key highlight for us. So, if we take a look at the kind of reporting and the statistics that are out there today, with regards to, the numbers that are being kind of breached and attacked. So I think for me, it's about kind of looking at those, being able to exploit those vulnerabilities, being able to start with step number 1. And I think a key takeaway for me would be around MFA and enabling MFA. It's something that a lot of partners still don't do, which is crazy.
That is a sad fact. I think we'll agree there. I think I mentioned this on one of the other episodes that I saw a statistic a little while back that said that 99.9% of identity-based attacks can be stopped by just having MFA in place.
Exactly. Yep. It's something that we're trying to get across to our partners, but of course we need to enable them and educate them to then be able to pass that information on to their end users as well. So that's something that we really are trying to work on. It's what we're trying to spread and get that across to all of our partners. So for me, it's around kind of looking at how we can prevent, moving forward is something that's quite key.
Fantastic. And what are some of the risks that are out there? Because I mentioned this in one of the previous episodes, but it hasn't been a great couple of months in the UK for cybersecurity. There's been a lot of very high-profile incidents. I know these are, much larger, and we don't know the ins and outs of exactly how these attacks were actually perpetrated, or the attack vectors that were used. But it's still a concern, isn't it, for organizations? Like, who's next? Will we be next?
Exactly. I don't think it's a case. What we need to start looking at is not a case of if it will happen. It's a case of when. And again, yes, we have our enterprise organizations, but SMBs are being targeted just as much, if not more, because of the size. And it's not just about, suspicious links, and we need us needing to educate, and again, our internal employees about not clicking, links and opening attachments. All of these things can be prevented. It will never be 100%, of course, but getting most of the way there to again be able to kind of have those conversations internally.
Absolutely, and I think when you say that the SMBs are attacked, like as much, if not more, but because you don't see it on the front page of the news every time it happens, sometimes it's maybe a lot of SMBs don't realise that they are the target. Just because it's not on the front page of the news doesn't mean that it's not happening 1,000 times every single day all around the world. But yeah, it is something to absolutely be aware of.
So I would like to add there, though, so statistics, again, you always have to put your obligatory statistics in there. So 1 in 3 SMBs have been breached within the UK, minimum looking at 200K. As part of that kind of ransom, which can be catastrophic for SMBs. And I'm having those conversations with my partners on a daily basis about how we can protect their end users. So it's imperative. Again, we've got to change that mindset of not if but when. Absolutely. And we'll absolutely circle back to have a conversation around the M365 security stack and how it can help build that resilience. But one of the things I also want to talk about is continuity. So Sam, what does business continuity actually mean?
I suppose nowadays it's for users to be able to keep working, and it is keep working securely. So historically, obviously everyone was in an office. You were sitting in that behind that firewall, so you was worrying about protecting your perimeter, protecting your network, which then protected the devices within that network. When now, with everyone sort of working hybrid, with people working remotely, it's less about protecting that perimeter and it's more about protecting the device, protecting the identity and protecting that data. And that's where Microsoft 365 really shines, by providing those tools to be able to provide that sort of protection. You're looking at things like Defender for your protecting your devices and Intune for your configuration profiles. You're looking at using Defender for 365 to protect your email, which is usually things like ransomware. Most of those nowadays are coming through emails or through phishing. So it's being able to provide that defense in depth, that layered approach. So there is no one solution. It is Microsoft provide a stack of tools that together can provide that sort of zero trust infrastructure.
Absolutely, and I love that you mentioned the whole kind of like stacked solutions. That layered approach to security. In one of the previous episodes where we were talking to James and Sumit, we kind of touched on that like eggs in one basket thing. And one of the concerns that people have when it comes to Microsoft security is often I'm putting all my eggs into one basket, which is often an objection around having a single point of failure within an organization. If I rely solely on Microsoft, if Microsoft goes down, all of my security goes down with it. But that's not the case, is it? Because of this layered approach, Microsoft isn't one single point of failure, because we've got security solutions in place across the organization. Yes, they come from the same vendor, but they all work they work together, but they also work in isolation. So again, creating that layered approach that customers require. And one of the things that we've seen and we've spoken about, we all know this, since 2020, most organizations are working in a flexible hybrid capacity. How has that complicated things, when it comes to securing businesses, from a resilience perspective? How has hybrid work kind of thrown a bit of a spanner in the works?
I wouldn't say it's complicated things. It just means that it is a different way of working. So it has to be thought about in a different way. It has to be planned out rightly. Microsoft provides these tools, but they're not implemented. It's not you get that license, those tools are now in place. You do need to plan how those tools are going to be implemented, what's going to fit for your environment. Microsoft provide loads of tools and solutions for using to see how those recommendations can be implemented. Things like the secure score, which will provide sort of bespoke recommendations to say, this is what, for your environment, what we recommend you implement. Same with things like the compliance score, how you should be protecting your data. Using Defender for XDR, which will then provide all these different threat analytics that you can then use to say, okay, this is what my environment looks like now. And then Microsoft is actually providing bespoke recommendations and information on how to implement these. But Microsoft is not usually implementing them for you. It is up to you to plan out and implement those solutions and those processes.
It's not a one fit all either.
No,
it has to be thought about. For the partners to be having that conversation with their own customers. It's exactly what XMA are here for, Westcoast Cloud, to be able to really kind of take a look under the hood. We look at with regards to Microsoft, maybe all eggs in one basket, but then you could look at the flip side of that and look at all the one-point solutions that a company has to have for, protecting their identity, protecting their devices, MFA, single sign-on. They could all be separate one-point solutions. So the headache that could cause, should anything go wrong with one of those, is simplifying and standardizing, and all part of that Microsoft ecosystem. So it's about kind of simplifying that and really taking a look at what your needs are.
Okay, so Candy, with some of the tools in M365, like OneDrive and SharePoint, how can those be used to kind of like create continuity in practice?
Okay, with these tools in particular are quite key when it comes to secure cloud storage. So, it's about kind of protecting that data in real time. Real-time backup that comes alongside that, and then also you have things like versioning features and versioning control. So this would help to mitigate any risks when it comes to accidental deletion, or even a cyber attack, if anybody was to kind of obviously attack those particular documents. And then we can maybe take a look at remote accessibility when it comes to OneDrive and SharePoint. So now there's the remote boom, of course, there's the hybrid work as well. Everybody can work from wherever they are together on any of those documents that sit within either of those, within either of those tools. So I think it's about enhancing the collaboration within the workplace as well. So I think it's come a long way since the start of COVID and the start of work from home.
For many of us, that is the norm. So, being able to have the ability to, securely access data, to securely co-author and work collaboratively on documents and data. No, these tools are absolutely essential to any business that's looking to adopt, or at least further this modern workplace effectively. And Sam, from a security side of things, what can M365 do to help keep us safe from some of those major threats out there, like from phishing, ransomware, that sort of stuff?
So some of the key tools are the Microsoft Defender stack. So that includes Defender for Endpoint, which becomes your sort of EDR, your endpoint detection and response solution. So that will isolate and stop threats in real time. You're then looking at things like the Microsoft Defender for Office 365. So that becomes your protection for emails, so stopping those phishing emails. You also want to look at what you're doing regarding data. So are you using sensitivity labels to label data regarding things like highly confidential data? You may not want that data to be shared externally or to be accessed on certain devices. So using the tools to actually protect your data and protect your devices is key. Another key part is we're used to Office 365 being able to access it from anywhere on any device. But do you really want it to be able to be accessed from anywhere on any device? Do you want to limit that people cannot access 365 on unmanaged devices that you have no understanding, do they have antivirus on? Because out of the box, you can access pretty much everything on any device, but using things like conditional access to false MFA, to false certain requirements before people can access it is key.
Okay, and just drilling down into some of those, like Defender for Business. Now, I've heard some people say Defender for Business is just basically antivirus, and because it's free with M365, it's not that good. What would you say to that?
I would say look at the data. It's actually ranked as one of the best EDR solutions. So it's not just an antivirus. It is your antivirus. It's managing your firewall. It's managing ransomware. It's also providing information to Defender XDR, which then gives you the ability to look at what is actually happening within your environment and then take action on that. So you're going to see things like what vulnerabilities are in your network, what software has vulnerabilities that are installed on your device.
So before something potentially happens, we can get some insight into where we might, again, be potentially weak in some areas.
Exactly that.
I mean, just to add to that as well, so Defender for Business actually comes as part of the Business Premium suite. And, not to go into too much detail today, not to get too technical, but it's actually on par with enterprise version of Defender for Endpoint Plan 2.
Okay.
So it's, it's about the features and functionalities. It's about how it protects your organization. Threat experts is the only thing that's kind of missing from Defender for Business. So it's actually really up there.
But I've heard recently Microsoft announced that you can now buy the E5 security package for Business Premium. So that means effectively our SMB customers can now enjoy the same level of security, the same level of controls as some of the world's largest organizations. And that's incredible, surely.
Big news. It's something we've been waiting for. It's something our partners have been waiting for such a long time. So if you were to look at having Business Premium and then looking to add the E5 security add-on, rather than doing it individually and adding the different components on individually, you would look at saving up to 57%.
Wow. By
looking at the add-on. We're looking at Plan 2 of everything in essence. We're looking at Defender for Identity, Defender for Office 365, which Sam has just mentioned, but Plan 2, the key difference in that one is it comes along with simulation training. So we can, for lack of a better word, we can target our internal users. We can start having a look at who's clicking on links when they shouldn't.
So when you send out like a
dummy attacks,
a dummy like phishing email, let's see who clicks on it, and absolutely. If they click on it, let's get them in for some training.
And it's imperative, right? Exactly. So you can then start kind of tailoring that to specific users to start having those, those conversations with them. Also comes with Defender for Endpoint Plan 2. There's just some key, it's just been a long time coming, and it's made a lot of people happy. But hopefully, if you're not aware of Business Premium now coming with that add-on, then that's something we can let people know about today.
Absolutely, and I love the fact that it has these features, especially the simulation, the training, because they always say that the weakest link in any organization security landscape, it's the people. Yeah. And it's because people make mistakes. People potentially, they might get tricked into clicking on a link in an email. Attackers, they use email spoofing and all kinds of stuff that's the goal, really, isn't it? To trick you into doing something you wouldn't normally do. So the ability that we've now got, we can use these tools to almost educate, as well as protect. I mean, that's really good.
Yeah. And attacks, they're just getting more sophisticated every day.
Oh, yeah.
So it's never going to be, you're on kind of on the ball all the time. So it's just definitely something that's quite key to have.
No, absolutely. And one of the things with security, obviously we have to bring AI into the conversation of security, because they are two topics that I do think go hand in hand. When people think about AI, there is that that fear that people have. I'm going to potentially be giving an AI access to all of my company information, company data, all this, that, and the other. So from a resilience perspective, for any listeners or watchers out there that are thinking about an AI-driven future within their organization, between the pair of you, what would your advice be to be able to adopt AI, but again, remain resilient, secure, and all that?
Yeah, no. So from myself, specifically talk about Copilot. There are definitely a few key points that you need to be aware of. It's, you can't just jump in and just turn on Copilot.
And why not?
You have to be able to lock down your documents. If you can imagine, we've just released Copilot into the organization. I could quickly type in, if Copilot has access to all of our documents, I can type in, what does my MD earn? And it's not the kind of information you want to be sharing company-wide. So it sounds hard work. It's really not. Again, that's what XMA and Westcoast Cloud are here for. It's about, those kind of tags and labels and being able to lock down certain documents. What else do you think we need to put in place?
Exactly that. It's about understanding that when you prompt Copilot, it's based on so if I prompt Copilot, it's based on what I have access to. If you prompt Copilot, it's based on what you have access to. But what's happened in the past is that people lose track on what's been shared to who. So historically, for using things like anyone links, which are anonymous links, so that you can quite easily not know that someone has access to a file. The SharePoint site might be locked down, and a couple of years ago someone shared that file and they've used an anyone link, anyone in my organization. That means that everyone now has access to that file. So when you're prompting Copilot, Copilot will instantly know what you have access to, and it will retrieve that information. So it's really about making sure that you understand the permissioning that is in place in your SharePoint and OneDrive, so that your data is secure. Using things like sensitivity labels to manage that data is key. Also making sure that your data is still relevant. And using things like retention labels. You've not got lots of old data, because if you're asking Copilot questions, you want it to be based on the newest data. You don't want it to be using that old data. So it's about making sure your environment is secure, making sure your access controls are in place, and that data is still relevant.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned access as well, because I would say that not that I want to focus on nightmarish scenarios, but it could potentially happen if somebody's identity were to be breached and that user has Copilot. It potentially makes it easier for attackers to potentially find information if they were to gain access to somebody quite high up in the organization who's got quite a lot of access to data, and then Copilot just makes that sort of retrieval easier. So identity, access, governance, all of these things also need to potentially be looked into, and I think that's sometimes one that's some customers overlook.
Yeah, Microsoft has made it easier recently. So with the release of Copilot, they've now added on the ability to use what's called SharePoint Advanced Management, which used to be an additional license add-in, but you now get that as part of the Microsoft 365 Copilot licensing, which gives you a set of tools to work on that Copilot readiness, to be able to get the reports on where your data is being shared to, who's using those anonymous links, to really get your environment ready before you implement Copilot.
And there's SRPs as well, so SharePoint restriction policies, where we can effectively lock down certain areas of SharePoint. And it's a sticking plaster. It's not meant to be a permanent solution, but effectively, if we want to get Copilot out there, but we're not quite finished cleaning up this particular SharePoint folder, we can effectively blind Copilot to that folder whilst we deal with everything and then remove the restriction policy. So there's a lot of tools out there that Microsoft are giving customers to be able to make this process as seamless and as stress-free as possible. But to be honest, what are we really asking customers to do? Protect identities, data, access, and to be honest, is that something that we should just be doing just for Copilot? Probably stuff we should probably be doing.
You should be doing it anyway.
Should be doing it anyway, absolutely. So I mean, that's the thing, with Copilot, I've heard some people go, "Oh, Microsoft having Copilot's too difficult because Microsoft want you to do this, this, and this." To be honest, all they're saying is protect your identities, protect your data. To be honest, I don't think that's a particularly.
It's not a big ask, is
it? It's your data.
Exactly. I think it's a bit scary when you first look at it. If the company's been going years, you've got however many years worth of data. It's a scary thing to look at, but if you're working with the right people, which in this case, hopefully you are, then, it's about kind of going through that together. Just that cleanup piece has to happen. And once that starts to happen, then it just gets easier. And then, of course, you can start securing.
Absolutely. And that's the main point. Again, for anyone that's watching, there is on the cusp of pulling the trigger and moving forward with Copilot. You're working with companies like Westcoast and XMA. You're not doing this on your own. They are going to have the help, the assistance in terms of like getting things that they're foundational. The foundational productivity, data hygiene, management, all that stuff. I mean, that's stuff that XMA's already got like roadmaps and plans in place with to help customers, right?
Exactly that. It's working with the customer to build out those plans to how to get those requirements implemented. And it would be a phased, you would look at it with the phased approach, what starting with things like protecting your data, then working on your devices, etc., until you've then got that sort of zero trust infrastructure in place that you're confident that your data and your devices are secure before you then move down that route of implementing Copilot.
So it could sound scary, but it doesn't have to be. That's the main thing there. So one of the other areas of resiliency that I do want to discuss as well is collaboration. When people, with the way that we work nowadays, where people can't be in the same place, but they still need to work as a team. How do we maintain the resilience of teamwork nowadays? What can M365 do to help with this?
I think it's come a long way, to be honest, rather, more than just an IM tool these days, but we could look at teams. You've mentioned teamwork, but we could specifically look at teams and being able to, again, collaborate, co-author, have those Teams calls, have them internally, have these sessions externally. There's live events. There's a webinar, tool on Teams as well. It's just so much more than an IM tool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as Candy said, it used to be Teams was here for messaging, but now I use Teams more on a daily basis than any other application. Yeah. It is my communication tool, it's my collaboration tool, it's my entry point to my data. It's my phone system. It's my meeting place. It is everything that I do on a daily basis, pretty much in one app. And without Teams, I would struggle. I work remotely, and obviously a lot of people working remotely. Obviously the boom in Teams was massive when obviously the pandemic, all of that, because you need that to be able to work remotely. It's got everything you need right there.
Well, the thing is, especially I remember when, obviously I remember it was only 5 years ago, but when COVID did kick off, Zoom started to do very well, didn't they? Zoom really started to, the whole kind of like Zoom became like a kind of colloquialism, didn't it? was it Zoom quiz nights and stuff people were having. Obviously it did very well in the consumer world, but I also saw a lot of organizations. And when I'd speak to people about Zoom, and they go, "Oh, it's the same thing as Teams. Same thing as Teams." Yeah, it's just. I mean, again, that wasn't the case, was it? I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not having a go at Zoom or anything. Zoom was a great meetings tool. I'd say that about Zoom. I'll give them that. It was a great meetings tool. But to me, Teams was a great collaboration tool, and that to me was the difference. That is where Teams comes alive. It's the difference between using Teams and using Teams well. That's the thing about Teams. The fact that it does kind of work with all of your applications. The fact that you can use Teams as a platform. You can embed things like Power BI dashboards into Teams. You can build custom Power Apps and deploy them directly into Teams. You can co-author. You can share data. It connects to. It's a front for SharePoint as well. Everything that sits behind it. Teams for many of us, it is the beating heart of our organizations. But I do wonder how many people out there are still under the misapprehension that Teams is a messaging tool.
It's messaging.
Yeah.
I think the numbers would be scary, to be honest. I think it's just a case of, again, just taking that, just asking the question, just coming to XMA. If it's not something you're using at the moment, have that conversation, let them kind of help you understand a little bit more about Teams and how to move forward.
And I suppose another part is if you're not providing something like not providing Teams to your users, is they will find something else, something that you don't have control of. You start going down that route of sort of shadow IT.
Absolutely.
With Teams, I know I can apply my compliance policies, my labeling, my security, where with something like Zoom, I lose control of that, and I don't know what my users are doing, what data they're putting in there, where with Teams, I've got control and oversight of that as an admin.
Absolutely. And just for anyone that may be watching that maybe isn't familiar with the term shadow IT. Shadow IT is quite simply when somebody within your organization starts using applications or services that are not sanctioned by the IT department. Obviously, whether it's, like a messaging service, AI, that's been a massive one for shadow IT, because, people, there is like literally hundreds, thousands of AI tools out there, but how many of them aren't real? How many of them are just malware disguised as AI that are just key logging or just saving everything that you do? How many people put customer or company information into third-party AIs, company data, figures, all that sort of stuff? That's dangerous stuff.
Really dangerous, really dangerous. There's over 1,100 AI platforms out there.
Are these legitimate AI platforms or just?
It's Microsoft statistics when it comes to cloud apps. And yeah, just over 1,100 from what we know that are real. But each time that updates, it also updates your cloud app data as well, which is another tool within the Microsoft stack. But it's just crazy that it's just going through the roof. Like I said, there's over 1,100. Some of them use 3 or 4 different domains. It's it's about whether they're compliant. There's all sorts of reasons why you shouldn't be using secure AI tools.
And I guess one of the good things around things like M365 Business Premium and even like E5, you've got things like Cloud App Discovery and stuff like that, so you can actually have visibility over the applications and services that people are actually using within the business. So shadow IT, because the bigger problem with shadow IT is how do you know? How do you know it? Are you just going to walk around and look at everyone's devices? Things like Cloud App Security, that can at least give you an overview of here's all the stuff that's sanctioned, that's okay, and here's all the things that people have just taken it upon themselves to use. You might look at some of it and go, well, it's not ideal, but I don't think it's that bad. But you might see something on there, think, holy hell, that should not be being used in the workplace. And then obviously, with things such as the E5, you can then take action, block that service. So, just adding again that resilience and security. And we started off by talking about Teams as well, in terms of the collaboration side of things and understanding the value of Teams. I would say that becomes even more pertinent, if customers are looking to adopt an AI strategy, in the future. If they are looking, how are you supposed to sell Copilot on the merits of its functionality in Teams if you've got a customer that doesn't really understand the value of Teams in the first place. So the fact that Teams can do so much, it's important that, we look into it. And like I said, if you are someone that uses Teams and you don't think you're getting the most from it, speak to XMA. They can talk you through all the amazing things that you may be missing out with Teams. All right, so again, I'm pretty sure that we could talk till the cows come home about all of it, because there is so much to unpack, when it comes to, continuity, resilience, and especially across a very broad stack of solutions. But we are going to have to look to start wrapping up. So, Candy, if I could just last question to you, what's one habit that you'd recommend for an SMB to strengthen their resilience?
I think everything we've discussed today, really maybe taking that next step and looking at investing in proactive cybersecurity training for their employees. We've talked about Defender for Office 365 Plan 2 and how you can have those simulation attacks, but I think it's taken it to the next level now, really kind of educating your end users, providing that key cybersecurity training, whether it's the initial starting training, whether it's a little bit more technical, whatever's needed, trying to find out what you need within your organization to meet your individual users' needs.
Absolutely. We can't discount, the fact that having, strong security software is absolutely key, but that education piece. Again, you can have some of the best security solutions in the world, but if you've got staff that don't really understand, the threats and everything, you need both. Yes. Is what we're getting at. So yeah, absolutely. And Sam, from yourself, what would one technical recommendation be to maybe future-proof our environment?
I would say is once you have gone down the route of implementing things like your Defender and your Defender for Endpoint, your Defender XDR, those solutions, is you need to keep on top of it. You need to be looking at those audit logs and those alerts. These systems, they provide lots of information and they are evolving all the time. So it's not a system the majority of these systems it's not just you set it up and then walk away. You need to be on top of it. You need to be looking at what's changing in your environment, what new threats or new solutions are available. And you need to keep evolving, making sure that people are looking at that information. Microsoft, especially Defender, will generate a lot of alerts, and you need to make sure that there are people on top of that, because the majority of those alerts, Microsoft's not actioning those. They're giving you the information for you to action. So you need to make sure you've got people that are looking at that, they understand what that means, and then they're actioning those recommendations.
Absolutely. And I think nothing stands still, especially when it comes to resilience and security. They're always going to be trying to find ways to separate us from our data and our money, and we need to make sure we're keeping up. But the fact that hopefully the fact that you're listening to this, it shows that you are interested in looking at making some of these positive changes to your organization. So I'd say absolutely the first step is to get in touch with XMA and see how they can help. So Candy and Sam, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So here's the bottom line. Resilient organizations aren't lucky, they're ready. Microsoft 365 gives you the toolkit from cloud storage and collaboration to security and compliance to stay strong in the face of disruption. If this episode has sparked an idea, hit follow and maybe share this with your IT lead. Don't forget to join us next time on the Modern Work Podcast. Thanks to Sam, Candy, and to you, our listeners, and subscribe to this podcast on YouTube or Spotify. Until next time, thanks for watching, again, or listening. Bye.